Welcome to the Cables to Clouds podcast, your one-stop shop for all things hybrid and multi-cloud networking. Now, here are your hosts, Tim, Chris, and Alex.
Hello. We are back again with another installment of the fortnightly Cables to Clouds news podcast, where Tim and I take you through a handful of articles that have come out in the last 2 weeks that we thought were relatively interesting and related to the industry, etc. Right? So joining me, as I just mentioned, is Tim McConaughey at Carpe Diem VPN on Blue Sky. Is that right?
Yep, that's right.
I'm still you've had the same handle for so long. I can't believe you switched. Like you might need to. JuanGolbez.com has to be out there. You have to
I'm sure it does. It's not mine though. If it's out there, it's already not mine.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Just buy it. You should buy it.
Go find the poor sod that has it and buy it from.
Well, I did that. My name's Chris Miles at PGP Main on Blue Sky. So I did buy that just to keep consistent. So we're starting a petition today to get Tim to go out and spend the $10 or whatever it is to buy JuanGolbez.com. And we'll
this is when I find out that it's like actually a super famous name in Latin America or something.
Someone's been domain squatting on it for like 10 years, just waiting for you.
Yeah, or they've got like a really popular website and they won't part with it for less than $1 million or something.
Probably. That's fine. We'll crowdfund it. We'll get it to you, man. We'll make sure you get it. All right. So let's hop into the news for the last 2 weeks here. So we have a few articles to cover today. First one up is from SDX Central. The title of this is Broadcom Bounces VMware Operating Concerns. So this is an article kind of detailing how Broadcom has navigated the last year or so since the deal has closed for them to acquire VMware. And I will say there's some relatively surprising points made in here, specifically around them maintaining VMware customer loyalty. They are the earnings reports have come out that they're looking pretty well. Broadcom mentioned, there was a 196% increase from what Broadcom generated in the division of software infrastructure business. But to be fair, they didn't have anything really compelling prior to having VMware, so that makes sense.
Right.
But the kind of customer retention was quite surprising to me. Just because we've heard horror stories over the last 6 to 8 months about customers getting the renewals and them being like 10x more expensive, and Broadcom has also culled a bit of the portfolio a bit, where it's like down to like 3 products, right? And there's no mixing and matching, there's no variation. It's like you buy one of the 3 things and that's what you get. Like there's no piecemeal operations anymore. Which, in my mind, I was initially thinking, that means like probably vendors like Nutanix are going to be able to run away with just, business for customers trying to get off of VMware. But in here, there's also some details about from the Nutanix CEO, Rajiv Ramaswamy, I think is how you say his name, saying that the market is still continuing to be dynamic, and it sounds like Broadcom is being relatively more competitive in some of these deals, especially with the bigger players, which I thought was quite surprising. You don't really hear much about Broadcom being competitive from a commercial standpoint, and that they've kind of just the market is kind of unchanged for them. They still have the same value proposition. They're still having the same conversations. And to be honest, what I pull from that is I wonder if customers, and I've had this conversation a little bit with clients that I've talked to, is I wonder if there's more of a focus on modernization of the applications rather than migrating the virtualization stack. And that could be something like moving to something more cloud native or moving to Kubernetes, something to answer answer that question. I mean, not everything's going to fit into something like Kubernetes or is going to fit into running it on a EC2 instance or something like that. But that seems to be what I see customers, at least at this point, they're considering it, right? I think the VMware piece it's a big comfort piece for a lot of people. People want VMware because they've worked with it for 10, 15 years at this point, and they know it. There's plenty of VCDXs out there that know it like the back of their hand. So I mean, that seems to be what I've been seeing, and this article kind of leads me to believe that that's what is top of mind for a lot of these organizations. But I don't know. How about you, Tim? What's your inkling here?
Yeah, I think for all the talk that enterprises have put out about how like they're not going to get taken to the cleaner, they're going to find another option. They're hitting the fact that it's not actually that simple. And of course Broadcom knows this, that it's not actually that simple to migrate away from VMware. If you've built your entire infrastructure on VMware, you pretty much, and you're going to migrate away from it, you have two options, right? You're gonna disaggregate it and move it to the cloud in some format, or you're going to do like microservices or like Kubernetes, like you were mentioning, right? Like take it completely out of that environment where it's not virtualized servers anymore. But what you're probably not going to do, a lot of enterprises are probably looking at this and saying, what we're not going to do is just go like for like, make a lateral move with such a huge investment that's going to be required to do that movement, So I think what we're actually seeing is something I didn't think of when it first started. I thought the same as you, that hey, Nutanix and Proxmox are going to be able to eat Broadcom's lunch. But I don't think it's so much that. I mean, now of course the article has mentioned that Broadcom is being flexible and competitive for their largest customers. But that's still, I mean, their largest customers is still probably only like 5 or 6 customers, right? Like it's not that many customers probably. Yeah. So what probably is really happening is that people are stuck for the moment and they're either eating it or, they're finding a way to get away from this kind of virtualized environment completely, like accelerating movement to Kubernetes or microservices or the cloud or whatever. And I think maybe that's why I think Nutanix and Proxmox will pick up extra people. Like, I mean, the article actually mentions that they had like 600 and something extra new customers last year, Nutanix, which 600 customers, they put you in perspective of, I don't even know is that a lot? I don't know. Right. Like, I'm not sure what that means. But they are definitely going to pick up a lot of the table scraps, if you will, that Broadcom doesn't give a shit about. So, but a lot of the big customers that can afford to do something else are going to do something else. Like they're going to Kubernetes or cloud or just something that's not a lateral move to spend that much money to go to a lateral move and lock themselves into another vendor.
No, yeah, I think it's a great point. I think, like I said, it's a level of comfort, right? I wonder if just with that, I would like to see the numbers on how many of these customers are probably renewing at 12-month deals versus 3-year deals. Maybe they're doing a renewal just to like bide their time and figure out what to do over the next 12 months. They're kind of, eat the loss initially and then maybe do something later. So yeah, I'd be curious to see what that number is.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think that's exactly what people are doing. Is they're probably renewing, unless they 100% know that Broadcom is cutting them a sweetheart deal, then maybe they'll take the 3-year sweetheart deal or something. Because hey, why wouldn't you, right? If you're getting a sweetheart deal, why wouldn't you take it and give yourself time? But yeah, I think the majority of customers that are not getting the sweetheart deal from Broadcom are doing exactly what you said. Just paying out the nose, but the bare minimum that they can get away with just to buy themselves time. And we'll see maybe a focus on movement this year. I guess we'll see.
Yep. Probably.
All right. So speaking of that, so I have an article here from CIO Dive from built based on some feedback from Accenture, and Accenture, of course, being one of the largest IT services infrastructure value-added resellers out there. They've basically made based on what their clients are asking them for in 2025, they've made some kind of predictions about what the tech landscape and what's going to be important to enterprises as we move into 2025. What's interesting is I think anybody probably could have expected this. So, we've been in pretty pretty dire straits here for about a year and a half, right? The economy and everything, it's at least in the US, worldwide really. A lot of enterprises have basically had no money to spend, but at the same time we have generative AI and all this new, tech, and plus of course tech debt, right? All that tech debt just carried over while nobody was spending money. And so now enterprises are faced with this kind of, Scylla and Charybdis thing of, hey, we don't want to spend money, but like we have to modernize our infrastructure to keep our business relevant. So what Accenture, with this article is basically saying is that Accenture is being tasked by most of their clients with like, hey, we need you to help us save money, but at the same time, we need you to help us modernize for, generative AI or whatever broadly the quote unquote modernization umbrella. And so they think that 2025 is going to be all about this kind of incremental modernization effort, this very tight, very, very controlled modernization. Like you won't have the pocketbook open, but there will be money being spent. Like it's been too long since anybody spent, since companies are spending money on their IT, and they're going to have to just to keep up with the pace of technology and what's out there and what their competitors are doing. So I'm curious to see that being the case. You talk to more customers than I do. Are you seeing this out there?
Yeah, it's like we were talking about this before we hit record today, but I think this is kind of like a trickle down thing. Like this is, you're only going to re-architect infrastructure for AI if you're developmental force or your primary income revenue source is switching to an AI kind of workflow in some capacity, whether that's modernizing your apps, whether that's changing how your company operates, what have you. So I'm starting to see some of it. Like people, I feel like a lot of the infrastructure people are kind of like, oh, we're doing this thing, so I have to do this. There's not so much. They're not completely tapped into the business side as to what the motivators are. So, but I mean, I definitely am seeing some of this, so it makes sense. One thing I thought was interesting, and like in this article, one of the comments from the CEO Julie Sweet was that our clients are focused on reinvention, which means large scale transformation. We do not currently see an improvement in overall spending by our clients, specifically or particularly on smaller deals. So I'm not sure exactly what she means by that. Does that mean that there's still an improvement on overall spending? So I mean, like, is spending still going to be just as high, and it's going to be a lot more smaller deals for that? I didn't really get that.
Yeah. I think that what they're saying is basically, or what this particular quote means is that they're trying to do more with less. Like, right, meaning spending money, yes, but spending money specifically to try to, get more out of it. Like, just
okay, yeah. Yeah, major extraction from every deal, I guess is what they want. But yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Like I said, I'm definitely seeing some of the movement in this space as well. Surprisingly, apparently AI adoption in Australia is quite high. We're one of the leaders. I don't know. Australia loves being like, oh, we're one of the biggest in this. You always take it with a grain of salt. Like, I wonder what at a grand scale how right. True it actually is, but supposedly we are kind of leading the charge in that way with a few other players. But yeah, definitely seeing it in my day to day. All right. So next up is an article from TechCrunch. So Google CEO Sundar Pichai? How do you say his last name?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Okay. Actually, let me start over. I don't want to mispronounce the Google CEO's name.
Pichai, something like that.
Pichai. Yeah. Okay, so next up we have an article from TechCrunch with Google CEO Sundar Pichai saying that it has been basically told to the employees of Google that in 2025 will be a critical year for the company, and the biggest focus being Gemini, which is, as we all know, this is their primary large language model in the AI space, which I don't know where it ranks in the hierarchy of adoption, but I imagine it's probably similar to the way that Google Cloud is favoring an adoption, where it's probably in top 5, but definitely not number 1, not number 2 type thing. So, like I said, I mean, this a relatively short article, just kind of mentioning the focus on Gemini and making it more available to consumers in some capacity, which, like, I'll be honest with you, I don't think I've ever used Gemini. Oh no, we did use Gemini. It was like relatively forgetful.
Yeah.
I don't, or sorry, I should say relatively forgettable. I don't quite remember using it much at all, but yeah, I mean, he says it's a critical year for the company. It feels like every
That's
year
every year.
Yeah. So it's I don't know how this will actually play out. Who knows? Maybe they'll kill it in 2025. I could definitely see that happening. But yeah, I don't know. What do you think, Tim?
Yeah. So what I think is interesting is that in this article, he's specifically mentioning that we will make Gemini more available to consumers. And I'm thinking to myself, was it not available to consumers? Like, were they hiding it all behind the curtain in 2024 and just nobody noticed because they weren't using it? Like,
I don't know. I mean, I assume that means integration with products.
Yeah, I assume. Yeah, maybe but they're not like, I don't feel like Google is like the products, like, like like AWS, where they just have like 1,000 freaking services and then they cross pollinate all their stuff together, right? I don't feel like Google really does that. So I'm curious what they mean by making it available to consumers.
I would think, yeah, consumers. I don't know how much that overlaps with like G Suite and things like that.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, I could obviously integrating Gemini in Gmail seems like a doable thing. I'll be honest with you. I'm a big Gmail user. I never log into the web interface, so I don't know if there's already Gemini integration there today. I have no idea. We should probably have a look after we get done recording. But I don't know. I mean, but also I don't use G Suite. So I mean, but like we were talking about this earlier, like they're kind of at the same level as Meta. Like they have so much fucking data about people.
Yeah, like
they should. This seems like it should be easy, but it's not.
And maybe it's the type of data they have that isn't useful for what they're trying to monetize, like large language model, right? Like it's, all this data about people, their spending habits, like that's all geared towards ad. And maybe this is it. Like Meta and Google have the kind of data that you want if you're going to serve ads to someone.
Right.
But how useful is that as a large language model? Like, I don't know, right? Like, I mean,
I'm gonna start going to ChatGPT and say, show me the best ad.
Exactly.
Show me a really good
you know everything about me. Tell me something I want to buy.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, that's. I wonder if it's that really at the end of the day, that like, because it can't be money. We're talking about Google and Meta, right? It can't be money. It's gotta be the type of data that they have on hand to train with. It must be just different, but I don't know. So interesting article, pretty short, like you said. I am curious, very, very curious what Google means by focusing on Gemini. Like if they just mean improving the quality, cool. I mean, if you throw enough money at a large language model, it'll always get better, I'm sure, right? So I guess we'll see.
Yeah, we shall see.
Okay, the last one we have is from Reuters. This is a kind of a follow-up to something that broke all the way back in, I think, October, and it's been kind of just new details that has been coming out about it steadily since. The new information that makes this a newsworthy article is that the U.S. has now added a ninth unnamed telecom provider to the list of providers that were hacked by the Chinese-backed Salt Typhoon hacker group, I guess. What do they call them? What do they call them? State-sponsored hacking. There's a name that they use from
I think so.
cyber espionage, group or whatever. So this is interesting because that's 9 telecoms in the U.S., including like the major ones. Like Verizon was, I think, who they originally broke back in October, talking about Verizon, and then AT&T was very quickly added. This is also why the FBI came out and said, start using end-to-end encryption for messaging applications. Don't, and this, I just read an article yesterday or the day before about how iPhone and Android users shouldn't send text messages to each other because it's unencrypted. It's encrypted on their network, but like when you switch, basically. So this is kind of the whole point of Salt Typhoon, is that by gaining access to the telecom networks, they essentially become a giant man in the middle, right? The telecoms are a man in the middle. That's what they are, right? So, a hacker group that has access to it has access to essentially anything on the wire. This article mentions, for example, that they could, do text messages and record phone calls and do geolocation on all the users of the telecom. Pretty scary stuff all by itself. But again, these are like, like level 1 networks, tier 1 providers. So everybody goes through them. There's no, it's like think of the US as a giant switch or something. Like this would be the core switch. The telecom providers are like core switches.
Yeah, right.
So everything goes through there. And the whole end-to-end encryption thing is the story. Like, with end-to-end encryption, whether it be network layer or application layer, whatever it is, that is proof against this type of attack, because a man-in-the-middle attack can't, do much against full end-to-end encryption, right? There's no wire to tap you're going to get unencrypted data, right? So that's why they suggested encrypting all your data. That's why technologies like MACsec are being called into question for being point-to-point encryption rather than full end-to-end encryption. Like little things like that, like all sorts of encryption technologies have proven less than effective against this type of attack because it's a man-in-the-middle attack. So. Anything? I mean, you've looked at the article. Anything that extra to add there?
Yeah, it's. I think the reason, like you said, this was something that broke back in like October or something. I think the reason we're covering it now is, like, I'll be honest. I remember when this came out back in October, there was still a large delay in actually getting any concrete information about it. Like when I heard back in October, this espionage company from China has, broken MACsec, and I was like, MACsec's a relatively like modern technology. It's like, I'd be surprised if they like broke the algorithms and all that, and did whatever that. Yeah. But it's not so. I think it just kind of leads to the drawback of MACsec. Like MACsec is a secure protocol, but it is hop by hop encryption. So if the encryption and decryption happens at layer 2 on every hop along the path, right? So if there's ever something, if the thing in the middle gets compromised, or anything along the path gets compromised, you have access to it because that is the device that is doing the encryption and decryption across each hop, right? So it's essentially a man in the middle without having to actually inject yourself into the middle. You just gain control there. But like you said, these are all tier 1 telecoms that were fallen victim to this, and there's 9 total that have been named, and the top ones are Verizon, AT&T, Lumen. Lumen is that the CenturyLink level 3 one?
Did they buy level 3? Yeah, maybe.
They changed their name ages ago. I know it used to be CenturyLink, but yeah. So I mean, like you said, this just kind of speaks to the drawback of MACsec, which we have this conversation a lot in our day to day because we work on a platform that uses IPsec encryption over the top for just the problems that this introduces. So it's disappointing, but that's the drawback with hop by hop encryption. Like there's I don't know the way to spin it. That's just what it is.
Yeah. I mean, and again, to be clear, like if you're using application layer encryption, MACsec isn't doing anything. Our IPsec isn't doing like nothing. Application layer encryption is application layer encryption, right? It's app layer, meaning that's fully end to end as well. It's encrypted at the app on the one side and decrypted on the other side. So it's not like MACsec or IPsec or any of these are specifically, good, bad, or ugly. It just depends on the type of attack, which again, the Salt Typhoon being one of a man in the middle. But again, all apps aren't encrypted. And new, even like look at TLS. TLS just got updated because the encryption was getting aged there. So man, it's a cat and mouse game, and it probably always will be.
I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say you should encrypt just for the sake of doing encryption, like doing it at L7, L3, L2. I'm not saying do all of them, right. But I mean, having multiple locked doors on your data, I feel like that is a net positive thing as long as it doesn't introduce too much complexity. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, if you're relying on one layer of encryption and it's at a certain piece of the stack, you've got to consider that could be broken, I think, in the long term.
Well, right. And again, it's not that MACsec was broken or IPsec or any of those. It's literally in the case of specifically MACsec in this type of attack, like you said, the device that is owned is the same device that's doing the decryption and the encryption.
This is a functional drawback of MACsec. That's just how it is. It's not like it was, unsecure or anything. It was the thing doing the MACsec was unsecure.
Yep. And not much you could do about that besides, of course, rotate your passwords and do all the fun stuff to keep your stuff safe. But anyway,
maybe all the passwords were Cisco 123.
Yeah, that's how they got in.
Yeah. All right. And with that, I think we'll go ahead and wrap up for this week. So thanks again. Remember, we put all these articles into the show notes. So if you want to have a look at any of these, and there's a few that we always throw in there that don't always get talked about on the show. So if you want to have a look at those, please check out the news doc that's in the show notes. Once again, I'll plug this again. Tim and I have an advanced AWS certified advanced networking specialty exam certification guide from PAC. That's such a mouthful, man.
Yeah, it's like ANS C01. Let's just say nobody will know what it means.
ANS C01 test from AWS. We are releasing a book with Pact on that particular exam. It's up for pre-order now. We will also put that in the show notes. It's between us and our good friend Steve McNutt, friend of the show, guest of the show. So please check it out. And with that, I will let you go, and we'll see you next week.
Yep, take care.
Bye.
Hi, everyone. It's Tim, and this has been the Cables to Clouds podcast. Thanks for tuning in today. If you enjoyed our show, please subscribe to us in your favorite podcast catcher, as well as subscribe and turn on notifications for our YouTube channel to be notified of all our new episodes. Follow us on socials at Cables2Clouds. You can also visit our website for all the show notes at cables2clouds.com. Thanks again for listening, and see you next time.